Well, one time, we were at a swim meet, and we were doing our mid-meet, post-halftime, whatever they call it at swim meets, meeting, you know, what was going on. I think we were swimming against either Holland Patton or Carthage at home, and one swimmer, Tim Campany, had been ill that day, but had felt like he was good enough, you know, 65 or 80% could swim. And during the diving section, he had drank an entire blue Powerade. And so during Bob's speech, where he would rally our spirits and kind of, you know, when do it for the team, let's keep it going. Tim, there's sort of a gagging sound in the background, kind of like a little like not even loud or anything. And we all look over, and Tim has thrown blue material all over the wall and the stairs of the tunnel. But to Bob's credit, you know, he wasn't phased. I think Bob saw a lot of vomit in his days, and you know it's still I can still see it when I shut my eyes sometimes. There's actually a story I still tell when I'm on dates with girls now and then. Was that when I was on the swim team, we had for, I think it was 3 or 4 years. Was it 3 or 4 years? 4 years running, we had the highest GPA of all the teams.
Yeah.
4 years running, we had the highest. We had like 98 point something. Like, we're all brains on our team, you know, unlike the wrestlers. And we were book smart, not necessarily smart. And we were doing technique training on a Saturday, and we were doing turns off the walls, and we were going through, and Bob is giving us these technique pointers and critiquing our turns. And I come in and I do the turn, and then Bob stops and he has us all stop, and he begins describing, like, he's like, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then he says, but the most important thing is, Mr. O'Connor, when you come off the wall from your turn, you are what? And just kind of a blank stare. There's maybe 20 or so words that go into my mind immediately. None of them seem particularly right. And I said, I don't know, kicking maybe? And Bob says, no. And he says, anybody else? When we come off the wall, we are what? And all the other swimmers kind of stare blankly too. Stare. We're swimming? No. We're moving? No. And Bob says, all right, I'm going to give you a hint. And he says, oh, we're in the position. He's like, no, it's one word. And so we're still staring for, you know, a very uncomfortable kind of minute. And Bob finally goes, I'll give you a hint. It starts with an L. Blank. It ends with an L. Silence. It has 2 E's in it. Simultaneously, everyone shouts out, Leel Bob! Bob puts his hand down on his thing. He was trying to say level, but, you know, I think the spirit of that, you know, really was, we might have not gotten the correct word, but, you know, we had the soul of the word. Helped me develop a pretty good BS filter for the world, too. not by you know, material example, but Bob was very, for a place like Lowville, which tends to be pretty reactionary all the time. Bob was a guy whose thinking that was a little bit out of line with everything, or at least from adults that we'd heard. Most teachers I had were extremely apolitical or hardcore right-wingers. So Bob's, you know, political beliefs are very much, you know, a child of the 60s, 70s, whenever he was actually a kid, 1860s, I don't know. But he, it was like we'd go into practices sometimes, and at the time he was the only person who I knew personally who was openly critical, say, of like the 2000 election or whatever. You know, and that was about the same time when I was beginning to learn to not have the same knee-jerk political reactions that my parents had by default of things. And that was very refreshing at the time, you know, that when I was 16, that there was at least one older person who more or less agreed with me on topics that everyone else was an idiot. It seems, Bob was actually even more right than I knew at the time. It seems even more ridiculous, you know? To my final day, I don't think I'm ever going to forgive Bob for snow day practices, though. God, I mean, when I was in elementary school, you look back, you look forward to a snow day and you'd be so excited. But you know, in high school rolled around, all of a sudden it'd be a snow day, and I'd have to put my head down and groan because that meant going in at 9 anyways and having 3 hours of practice ahead of me. I mean, it was not my fault that it was snowing, but thank you, Bob. You made me a jock in high school, which is something I didn't realize until much later. So the beauty of Bob is that he'd get you into being a jock so seductively that you wouldn't even notice that you were a jock while you were actually a jock at the time, you know? And now I've come to accept that. Being a jock is something I'm proud of.